Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria has condemned the recent reconciliation efforts between President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, FCT Minister Nyesom Wike, and Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara, calling it a dangerous attempt to legitimize what it described as an unconstitutional suspension of democratic institutions in the state. In a statement signed by its national coordinator, Emmanuel Onwubiko, the group criticized Governor Fubara for accepting political settlement rather than challenging what it called his illegal uprooting in court. HURIWA described the March 18 declaration of a state of emergency, which saw the suspension of the governor, deputy governor, and the State House of Assembly as a blatant violation of Nigeria's constitution. The group accused the Supreme Court of deliberately delaying a suit filed by opposition governors to challenge the suspension, alleging that the delay was orchestrated to allow time for a political resolution beneficial to President Tinubu's 2027 re-election ambitions. This so-called reconciliation is a smokescreen to whitewash a constitutional breach, the group claimed. Citing Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution, HURIWA acknowledged the President's power to declare a state of emergency, but insisted it does not permit the removal of elected officials, which must follow due process through impeachment, resignation, death, or incapacitation. The group also emphasized that under no section of the Constitution can a sole administrator be imposed on a state. HURIWA concluded by accusing President Tinubu of political bias for failing to declare an emergency in violence-plagued Benue State, calling the disparity discriminatory. The group warned that history would judge harshly those involved in what it called a gross subversion of democracy under the pretense of peace. Very strong words there used by HURIWA. But then, Chide, what is your position on this story?
I want to come from this angle. First and foremost, we don't have democracy in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
It's there in our constitution.
That we don't have democracy in
Exactly.
Nigeria. Okay, please educate me.
Yes. The paragraph 1 of our constitution says transition to civil rule. Transition to civil rule. It says whereas the federal government of Nigeria has accepted to transit to civil rule.
Meaning that it's a military constitution.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Civil rule. No, I want us to demarcate between democracy and civil rule.
Go ahead.
So now, because they made mention of states like United States, Mexico, and other states that practice democracy and what is obtainable there. HURIWA, I'm quoting HURIWA now. But so that comparison shouldn't have even been there, because ours is not democracy. So Nigerians should not make the mistake of taking civil rule to be democracy. There are several types of government, and not all. Autocratic government may not necessarily be military rule. So this, I want to come from that angle. And in pertaining to what their take is, I so much also aligned. But where I have this is that for them to think or refer Nigeria to as a democratic state, that's where I only differ from their take. But I align in total with their take on this, because in law we say you cannot push something on nothing and expect it to stand. Ab initio, I don't want us to go back to that. It has been overflogged since March 18, whether it is right or wrong. The declaration of emergency rule in Rivers State, whether it is right or wrong, it has been an overflogged issue. So I don't want to go, and people have taken their decision. Now we are at the point of there is a reconciliation, but you just have to make reference to that departure from the constitution by the president, the terrible mistake he made. He committed himself.
How so?
Now, he committed himself because it is glaring to Nigerians to the point that the blind can see it, the deaf can hear it.
Hear what? And
hear that there is a discriminatory rule in this country by the president, where you need to declare emergency, like in states like Zamfara, states like Benue, even in our eastern state here, Enugu, states like Plateau, Niger, where headers or killer herdsmen, let's call them what they are, not just headers, killer herdsmen, insurgents and bandits are ravaging, and it is known. We are losing scores, legions of our military personnel every day. The president pretends not to know. So his action towards River State was discriminatory. That is why I say I align in total with HURIWA on that regard. Yes.
You are a lawyer, correct?
Of course.
So you are well versed with Nigerian constitution, and I'm sure you also understand the chapter 8, part 2, section 305 of the Nigerian constitution, state of emergency. Now, in cases of insecurity, because I want us to, talk about the you called it discriminatory leadership of President Bola Tinubu. In the declaration of state of emergency, is there anywhere in the constitution that the constitution empowers a state governor whose state is ridden with insecurity to write to the president for a declaration of state of emergency in his state with two-thirds majority backing or vote of the State House of Assembly?
I want to put it this way. It is the governor in this regard should have been the one crying that he is overwhelmed by the state of insecurity, like we see in Borno State. The man is constantly crying.
Does the Constitution, what does the Constitution talk about? What does the Constitution provide in the case of Borno State now that you say the governor is crying out? Because now I am looking at constitutional provisions that's against the hypocritical lip service of leaders in power. Now, why on one hand, HURIWA is saying that the president is being discriminatory, right, in declaring state of emergency, we are now looking at what the Constitution has provided in times of insecurity and what a governor can do. In the case of Borno State that you just mentioned, that the governor is crying out that he's overwhelmed, what does the Constitution provide in situations like that?
The Constitution is very clear. I think the man is doing what he needs to do. He is not putting it in the armpit.
What is, okay, now let's look at the Constitution. Constitution, chapter 8, part 2, section 305, procedure for proclamation of state of emergency. Now, it says, I'll start from 1, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the President may, by instrument published in the official gazette of the Government of the Federation, issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in the Federation or any part thereof. Now, it listed, he said, let me start from 3. The president shall have the power to issue a proclamation of state of emergency only when A, the federation is at war, B, the federation is in imminent danger of invasion or involvement in a state of war, C, there is actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof to such extent as to require extraordinary measures to restore peace and security. D, there is clear and present danger of an actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof requiring extraordinary measures to avert such danger. And then it says, E, there is an occurrence or imminent danger or any occurrence of any disaster or national calamity affecting the community or a section of the community in the Federation. Then D, there is any other public danger which clearly constitutes a threat to the existence of the Federation. Or G. Now, this is where you're saying the governor has done all he should.
Good.
G, the president receives a request to do so in accordance with the provisions of subsection 4 of this section. Now, the subsection 4 says, the governor of a state may, with the sanction of a resolution supported by 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly, request the president to issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in the state when there is in existence within the states any of the situations specified in subsection 3, C, D, and E of this section.
Good.
And such situation does not extend beyond the boundaries of the states. Now, in cases like this, what do you make of it? Can the governor request for state of emergency to be declared in his state, considering that he's overwhelmed with the situation or the insecurity going on in the state?
The request you're talking about is whether people are looking at it, it should be written, a written letter, a written request. But when somebody comes out to the public, declaring public press, crying that his state has been overwhelmed by insecurity, and that is even accusing the military of doing nothing or not doing enough, what is that person doing? Is he not, come and help me? This is not even the issue. I want us to.
It is part of the issue. We cannot sweep it under the carpet, because when you're saying we are expecting that the governor should write a letter, that the governor does not need to write a letter because he has already cried out in the press. No, that is not constitutional. The Constitution says that that decision, the request of the governor, must be backed up by 2/3 majority of the State House of Assembly, which means it's a request that will be tendered before the State House of Assembly, and the State House of Assembly will deliberate on it, and the State House of Assembly will vote on it, and only 2/3 majority of the State House of Assembly can give life to that request. Now, when you're saying the governor has made a press conference and that should suffice, that should be a request calling on the president, is that what the Constitution says? I mean, you are the legal luminary here, and you should be educating me on the Constitution. Don't you think this position that you have taken, you know, doing things in unconstitutional manner, like declaring press when actually it should go through the House of Assembly, don't you think that was what even led River State to the situation, to its present situation in the first instance?
You cannot link both together.
Well, I mean, the Supreme Court said there was no government in River State. What do you call that?
There was no government in River State.
That was Supreme Court judgment.
I wouldn't stand here
that was Supreme Court judgment. There was no government in River State.
Yes, I wouldn't sit here
now, you cannot now say that in a state where there is no government, according to Supreme Court, and
that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't sit here to begin to fault the Supreme Court.
Emergency in a state that has no government. I'm trying to make it make sense how, you know, it is wrong. That's on one hand. On the other hand, when you started speaking, you talked about civilian rule and democracy, as it were, and then you said we are operating civilian rule in the country. Civilian rule, democracy, they are very similar, even though minimally distinct, but very, very similar in a lot of ways.
The only similarity is that it is ruled by civilians.
The difference between
there is a very huge gulf.
In both civilian and democratic rule, there is something called legislature. Now, in military rule, the difference between democracy, civilian rule, and military rule. Two things. One, the military rule is by a military personnel. And secondly, there is no legislature. It is only the existence of the executive and the judiciary. In Rivers State, we had a state where we had a civilian governor, but no legislature. So we only had the existence of the executive. and
see,
of course,
you are dragging
we had
us back to begin to
no, because we are looking at what HURIWA is saying. We are looking at the meat of the matter. So HURIWA is condemning the reconciliation. And he said it's a smokescreen. And HURIWA said that they cannot use reconciliation to bury illegality.
Yes,
and you
true.
said that you have the same position as HURIWA, and that the declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State was an illegality, right?
They have not denied
the president, on the other hand, was also being discriminatory. Now, on one hand, I have looked at the provisions of the Constitution. When we talk about declaring state of emergency in these other states, has the governor, has through the act of made a request to the president, has the states of, has the houses of assembly of these states legislated on this with a two-thirds backing the request of the governor for the president to declare state of emergency. That's on one hand.
You are even answering the question you're asking me.
No, I have asked you the questions. You've answered me, but your answers are it's leaving me discombobulated.
Good. Did Rivers State make any request? Did the governor of Rivers State make any request?
We at the time you're talking about, you are a lawyer and you should best understand that the issue with Benue State and Rivers State very, very distinct and extremely peculiar. Rivers State situation. Can you explain Rivers State situation for me in the Constitution?
Now, what
does anything in the Constitution provide for Rivers State situation where a sitting governor refused to obey court judgments from the lower court down to the highest court? Where an executive sits and says that he has recognized the legislature, and not just says that, but acts it. Where is it in the Constitution?
Vacated their seat?
Where is it in the Constitution?
Constitutionally?
Hold on. Where is it in the Constitution? Where is it in the Constitution that the minimum of a state house of assembly will have to be 3 against 24 that is provided in the Constitution? Where is it in the Constitution? What part of the Constitution empowers the governor to present a budget to what the Constitution does not even consider to be a quorum? You know, these are things that we have to look into. These are things that we cannot sweep under the carpet. While on one hand, we are pointing with one finger, the rest is at the end of the day pointing at us.
So
now, if you're taking the position of HURIWA,
that 2 wrongs
make sense to me.
Can never make a right. Now, there is an angle I even want to go to that.
Go ahead.
In this Constitution that is before you, is there anywhere that it says in to this extent that the president has a right to remove a constitutionally elected governor, constitutionally elected legislature? Was there any provision?
Now, I should be asking you that question, and that's on the reverse.
No.
Is there anywhere?
The place you read,
yes,
where you have the provisions of what could constitute emergency rule.
Does the Constitution bar the president from doing that in his case of emergency?
Did they provide for it?
Now, the Constitution is silent. So if the Constitution is silent, can you say the president broke a law that is not existent?
Now, that is why I said there is a discriminatory. Loretta, you are laughing.
I'm laughing because...
No, that's true.
Did the president break any law in declaring state of emergency?
Oh, he is creating his own.
Now, the question is there any law in this Constitution? Because does the Constitution
clear
bar the president?
How is an elected officer, executive or legislature, can lose his seat? It's clear there.
Now, from the action of the president, Did he say, I have removed Fubara from being the governor? He's suspended, so the governor did not lose his state.
What?
The governor did not lose his seat. I'm quoting you. The governor did not lose his seat.
How did he derive his powers to suspend?
That's why I said I have taken my time to go through the Constitution. While the Constitution does not provide the president,
but there are alternatives.
Hold on. While the Constitution does not provide the president the powers to suspend, the Constitution does not bar the president from doing the same.
You see,
now let me say something. I think you should be saying. I think maybe your agitation should be that there is need for a review of this aspect of the Constitution.
Whether there's review or not.
Was there lacuna? Yes. Did the president use the lacuna? Yes.
Now, couldn't he have explored other options?
What were the other options?
If his godson is having problem with another person,
what were the other
in a state that he has peculiar interest in,
what was the other option?
Reconcile them.
Are you not in Rivers State?
I am here. Hold on. There are methods.
Go ahead.
Yes. He did it. You know that the man reneged when he was forced and given some conditions. He came back and reneged.
Did he sign? Did he sign the peace pact? Did he sign the peace pact?
You see, did Gowon sign the Aburi Accord?
Hold on. And when he signed the peace pact and he came back to Rivers State, and that peace pact, stirred a lot of controversy in Rivers State. Do you recall his statement? What was his statement?
He made several statements.
No, I'll remind you of one.
He made several statements.
He said the red pen is in his hand, which means that Rivers State should not, bother. And he said no price is too much to pay for peace.
Even, of course, these were
the two statements that, calmed the frayed nerves of Rivers people, and they were like, okay, even though we are not in support of this, then go ahead for the sake of peace. And that was where the slogan Rivers First came out of. So the question would be, if he took that position in the first instance, why renege on it much later?
You see, some people, if you've heard this statement, go and sleep over something. You understand? You may take a decision now that you hastily took. That's natural to man.
All right.
That's natural to human. He may have slept over it. That's the same question I'm asking you. He may have slept over it.
Chidi, I am actually enjoying this conversation.
Why did Gowon, when he slept over the decision he took in Aburi, came back, why did he renege on it? That's the same scenario.
Did that lead to civil war or not?
It led to civil war.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Now, let me finish exploring where.
Go ahead.
Yes, the president should have set up an independent reconciliation group aside himself.
Are you aware that after the peace
impartial, independent
are you aware that after the peace pact, different groups called on the president to remove himself from Rivers State crisis?
Oh, yeah. Did he hear to that?
The late elder by Edwin Clark wrote
constantly
several letters.
Yes.
Now, some people and elder statesmen in Rivers State took the president to court. And I recall that much later, when the crisis now exacerbated, when the crisis exacerbated, the same people started calling on the president again to come back and intervene. I recall that during Illegality, when he was the spokesman to the president, he came out to address that matter and said that the president will no longer interfere in Rivers State crisis, and he did not interfere anymore.
But
now,
did he not interfere?
You are here. Of course, the peace pact did not stand, and that led to further crisis.
Now, look at my position. Look at my position.
The same persons, on one hand, you condemn the peace pact. On the other hand, you're saying the president should have also explored another alternative.
Alternative by setting up an independent.
Now, he has said, having been taken to court, he said, well, I'm backing out. Solve your problems. And then the president came out when several calls were made. He just said one thing: go to court. obey court orders. And the matter went to court. But that's the truth. The matter went to court. And even when court judgments were given, was it obeyed? Your guess is as good as mine. Good. So what one would say, brought us to where we are is refusal to obey court orders and court judgments.
You see,
I do not want to x-ray the activities of the Nigerian Bar Association and lawyers.
I expected, we all know, in fact, this is, in this life, people should be very, I don't know what is amusing you. People should be very impartial in governance. I want to say that.
Okay.
Yes. People should be.
Would you say, Chide, right now, that you're impartial? Would you say, genuinely, that you are being unbiased right now? From the lens of the Constitution, without fear or favor, without sentiments, without emotions. Would you say, in all honesty?
What do you want to hear from me on that?
I want to hear the truth, because you're a truthful man. Would you say that you are being unbiased right now? I
have not meddled into their crisis, so there's no need of asking me that question.
All right.
I haven't taken part in that. But all what I'm saying is that this president, showing his unbiasedness, impartiality, should have set up an independent.
He said they should go to
body. No. We are talking
higher
about
than the courts.
No, you see, there are what we call alternative dispute resolution mechanism.
Did it work in Rivers State?
It would have worked if he had not meddled into it. Remove yourself from it.
Okay.
That is the thing. He should have removed himself. Set up an independent body to look into that. Like this one, is this one? Do you call it peace? Is it peacemaking?
I should be asking you.
It is not.
Do you think
the man surrendered? He was subdued and he surrendered.
He was subdued.
And he surrendered.
That is even more interesting. He was subdued. When you say he was subdued, were you part of that process? When you say he was subdued, how did you? What variables did you consider in arriving at that conclusion?
Look at, did you not watch how many of his persons were there in that, the so-called peace pact?
One would be asking, why didn't the suspended governor carry his people along, particularly the elders?
Do you think he was given such opportunity? No, let's be truthful. Let's be very objective here. Do you think if the federal minister, the FCT minister, had seen those people, that he would have been in that meeting? He would agree to be in that meeting. Do you think?
The question would be now.
There is no way. That is what.
Hold on.
When you see how the man was coming out, you will know.
Let me give you an instance of one person that has been at very strong loggerheads with the FCT minister. In fact, he was one of the people that was egging the Rivers State governor then before he was suspended, and that's Bala Mohammed, the governor of Bauchi State. But as we speak right now, Bala Mohammed is in the camp of the FCT minister, in this entire PDP crisis that has escalated to where it was. Now, one would say in politics, there is no permanent
friend,
no permanent
enemy,
friends, just permanent interest. Now, if their interests align or will align with that of the FCT minister, and they can find them,
and that is why it is dangerous to trust politicians.
One would say, well, it is what it is, because one would say, because I am looking at the mechanics of politics in Nigeria, as it were. If their interests at some point will collide, there will be compromise at the end of the day. So the question would be,
that is it.
Why didn't the question would be, why didn't the suspended governor carry his people along?
I told you he was subdued. He was subdued.
He said he's a man of his own words.
Which a man of his own? Do we begin to throw up what somebody? I won't donate my liver and kidney. What has he donated? He has donated River State.
Well, one would say, like I said,
River's interest not bigger than his kidney and liver.
One would say, like I would say it again, if you're moving on the table for reconciliation, one would expect there are one or two persons that will go with you.
That's what I'm telling you. Are you thinking that he was given such chance? I don't think so. Now, even though we didn't, he will not even say.
Okay. Now, even if we are if we are to go by that,
look at in fact, at the time, I don't want to blame him. All right. Again, you know why? They say politics is a game of interest. You understand? Now, those people who are also majority of the politicians, not the rivers, indigenous and non-indigenous who are behind him, the politicians who are behind him are there for themselves.
Probably the governor is just realizing that.
That is the thing. And
you think
now,
he just realized that?
He is just realizing
he was the proxy in the entire
Exactly. Problem. So now, instead of dying for people's interest, let me get my own interest.
That's another interesting perspective. That's another.
You understand? So
no one would say that after this suspension, not one of these elder statesmen spoke up again. It was just the women that were on the streets wearing uniform,
do they understand what is happening?
Protesting. But then the elder statesmen, the vocal supporters of the governor went silent.
I don't want to make this statement.
Probably, like you said, during that period, the governor could have had some very sober, deep, sober reflection.
I want to tell you that the governor is on his own from now henceforth.
Was he ever not on his own?
The people who are supporting him, like you mentioned now,
was there a time the governor was with people? Because like I've always asked, prior to this time, I've always asked the question, is the governor actually the arrowhead of this crisis, or is he a proxy in his own war? If he's a proxy in his own war, he was just an instrument used to get at someone, and probably he was always on his own. Because I mean, it's always the machete that will get the slashes.
So maybe he has realized
that he was a proxy.
I wouldn't want to use that.
He was on his own all this while.
That politics is a game of interest. Yes.
He was only a means to an end for the people.
That is it. For the politicians, not the people.
For the politicians.
Yes.
And right now, so one would going by your submission, will you now blame the governor if he didn't carry them along? Do you think he would have suddenly realized that he has been alone all this while?
On that note, if given the chance, but I want to tell you categorically here that I don't think that such chance was given to him.
All right. Very well. Now I am confused.
That peace, the thing you people are calling peace, wouldn't have helped.
Chide, you have left me more confused.
You don't need to be confused.
Because on one hand you said that
we
the governor...
are unbanding things.
Because on one hand you said that the governor by now would have realized that he was on his own all this while. And the people, the politicians, were not exactly in support of him.
Lawrence,
and probably that, on the other hand, you're also saying that that the governor was not given the chance.
Exactly.
Which is contradictory, because if I was even given the chance and I have come to realize that I was a proxy, why should I still carry people who only used me as a weapon of warfare?
I have come to realize something. I made that conclusion recently.
Go ahead.
Based on his surrendering.
Surrendering.
Yes. When this man surrendered, I now understood what is involved in politics. There is no morality in politics.
Okay.
If you want to play politics, especially in Nigeria, in Africa, unfortunately, I have not lived either in Europe or America. Yes. So in Nigeria, where I have lived more than half of my life, there is no morality in politics. And anybody is this same, Chibike Amechi wanted to bring morality into politics. That's why he lost out. That's why he lost out. Chibike Amechi wanted to play a clean slate politics. They don't understand the game. The two men in Nigeria that understand the game of politics is Tinubu and Wike. And they should, anybody, I'm giving it to them. Should anybody want to follow politicians, follow these two men. He said, follow who know road. He knows the road. If you want to play politics, there are rules of the game in Nigeria. And most of them who claim to be politicians don't know it. That's why they, along the line, they fall out. They don't know the rules. They don't know the game.